Hello, 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 everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as your law intellect. This light is just a little bit much. How is everyone doing on this fabulous morning? I am coming to you live again from Los Angeles, California, but it will be my last time, at least in 2022, coming live from Los Angeles because your girl is coming home. This case, and the case I'm referring to is People versus Daystar Peterson, aka Tory Lanez. This has been one of the most inefficiently ran cases that I have ever experienced. So we come in by 10:30. We take a break at 12 till 1:30. We come back at 1:30. It may not start till about 1:45. Then we take another break at 3 o'clock. And then as soon as you get the cooking and moving, it's 4 o'clock. And then the judge is like, we're gonna adjourn for the day. So if you have a good day, you might get through 3.5 to 4 hours worth of testimony. This is literally a 3 day trial. This should not be taking this long. But anyway, that's just my rant. I just said this is so inefficient. I should not have been here for a week and a half. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the opening statements yesterday and some of the little nuances that occurred. But they still didn't finish those. So this morning the defense is supposed to finish their opening, and then the prosecution, they get their rebuttal because they get the last word because it's their burden. But your girl ain't going to that. So whatever information I give you about that gonna be secondhand. Because I gotta get home. Like, I practice in real life, y'all. So I'm gonna be heading out today. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. That was my intro rant. Hi Linda. Hi Miss Renee. Good to see you, Miss King. Ben Childs, always good to see you. Renee PTG, always good to see you. Jeff, thank you for coming. Linda, thank you. Kathy, Nessa, Sweet Nectar, Lindsay, let's talk about it, boo. Oh, y'all, thank you so much for coming and joining me. But I had to give my rant. I'm like, why is this case still happening again? You can do murder trials in 2 weeks. What is going on here? But then I realized we are only like in there for like 4 hours a day. So yesterday, the judge said, oh, we want everybody in here by 10 o'clock. We're going to start early. That's early, 30 minutes. See, in Michigan, we are to be there by 8:30, and we usually start by 9 o'clock. We have break at 12. We might have a little small break in between that, but we have lunch at 12 till 1:30. We come back, and then we pretty much go till 5 o'clock. We might take a 15-minute break or whatever, but we're going to get in a good 7 hours. You're exhausted when you leave trial. But these judges, they want to get you off their docket. So I'm like, do they not try many cases in this courtroom? What is happening? I mean, he is very, everybody should be very restful in this case because, yeah. Good morning, really, BTV. Thank you for coming over. Oh, Philly said I waited for you all day. Well, here I am. I was so tired though yesterday. I'm like, this stuff is really tiring. I am so over this Tory Lanez trial. Y'all just don't know. But now that it's over, now I can really give my opinion. Well, it's all the evidence has been entered in, so and my mind is over. They're just trying to persuade the jury, give them one last ditch effort. But so I walk in yesterday. Let me tell y'all this quick story. I walk into the court yesterday and I see this guy. He's and I pay attention to when people describe people, and he's a dark skinned guy. He got dreads, got on all black. I said, is that Quan, the driver? So it was all this whisper, like, is that Quan, the driver? Is that Quan? So I knew. I said, this case about to go on for another week. Now you finally get the driver that ain't nobody been able to find for 2 weeks. I'm not talking about Justin, the one everybody was saying was missing. I'm talking about Jaquan, the driver. We went through all of that, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's a rumor. Maybe it really isn't him. Then we get on the elevator, and the defense attorney actually acknowledged, yes, that was Jaquan. We wanted him to testify, but the prosecution said they would need a continuance, and they wanted the judge to wait a week. And I guess they were concerned. I don't know if it was the defense side, but somebody was concerned that the jurors wouldn't come back because we've already had four alternates, right? Started out with four alternates, and we're down to two. So two jurors have already been replaced. So they opted not to have him go on the stand. Now, mind you, he's the only one that was in the car that was sober. He was supposed to be the driver when all this stuff happened. So then he come at the 11th hour. Ta-da! Here I am. I'm going to testify for the defense. Like, what? I cannot make this stuff up. So we get there at 10 o'clock, and apparently because they were trying to figure things out, they didn't start till 11 o'clock. So then at 11 o'clock, we get Daystar Peterson, a.k.a. Tory Lanez. He invokes his right to plead the fifth. I mean, not plead the fifth. He invokes his right not to testify. Excuse me, I misspoke. Which he has the right to do, and you're not supposed to take it as if it's, it shows guilt or innocence. So he does that. Then the judge reads jury instructions. And then the prosecution finally gets up. And they start out with a picture of Meg Thee Stallion, and they have one of the quotes that she said. So she had all these quotes that she said during her testimony, and they took out, which prosecutors do a lot, they take out little clips. They'll cut out little clips and put it overhead so that you can remember those specific quotes. So they cut out those quotes. And, first they had the quote up there. So first they said what his charges were. So he has assault with a semi-automatic firearm. Let me see if I could say the exact count. He got shooting in a grossly negligent manner. He has what's the other code? I know it's Penal Code 245, a assault with a semi-automatic firearm, and it has some other language to it. And then he has carrying something with carrying a concealed firearm in the vehicle. So, thank you so much for the super chat. Okay, we'll talk. I'll check my DM. So, they go over the counts, which is pretty much what you typically do, right? So, after that, the prosecution goes on with quotes and some of the quotes she said in her trial. So then the prosecution says, everyone, don't focus on the party. I don't believe that's what's important here. I think what's important is the events that happened when Meg was shot. So then he goes on and tells the story about how Meg left the party with Kelsey and that Quan is driving. That's the driver that came yesterday and didn't testify. That he was driving at the time. An argument ensues. So the prosecution says the argument ensues between Kelsey and the defendant against Kelsey and Tory. So that's what he's saying. And he's sticking to it. So he said the argument didn't happen with Meg. It was between Kelsey and Tory. And then Meg she was so, upset about this argument that she said, pull over. She was ready to get out the car. So that's the whole Sunset Boulevard going to the bus stop in a bikini and Tory telling her to get back in the car. So then the arguments get so heated. Of course, she wanted to get out of the car. Ultimately, we know the car stops. That was in Nichols Canyon behind Sean Kelly's house. And then the prosecution says Meg gets out of the car. Tory gets out yelling, says dance, be dance, and then starts shooting her 45 times. So they did their little summary of what they're saying that occurred. After being shot, Meg was so terrified, and she crawled to 18-something Nicholas Canyon driveway. Kelsey comes over to comfort her. So what the prosecution is trying to do to eliminate any thoughts that Kelsey was the shooter is to make it that Kelsey was just so concerned about Meg. That's what they were trying to do by making about how great, Kelsey was to catering to her best friend. So Kelsey allegedly, according to the prosecutor's closing, comes over there and tries to comfort Meg, try to see how her best friend is doing. So then she says, because of everything that was going on, Tory was apologizing to everyone, so they felt that it was safe to get back in the vehicle. So they all get back into the vehicle, and we all know they end up getting pulled over, and then that's how the jail happened, and Meg goes to the hospital. So then the prosecutor brings up Meg's testimony. So then the DA says, let me take you back to last Tuesday, because that's how long ago it's been, y'all, that she testified. That's how long this case has been. Let me take you back to that last Tuesday. Meg said she was guarded in the morning. So I wasn't there in the morning, but apparently they said she wasn't really opening up. She said she was guarded in the morning, but in the afternoon, she said she was going to open up. So they said she was so open in the afternoon. She talked about her trauma. She was raw. She was emotional. She said everyone in the courtroom felt it. Everyone felt Meg's energy in the courtroom on how she felt. He asked the question, was Meg telling the truth that afternoon? So he asked the jury, he said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, was Meg telling the truth that afternoon? And he said, I think we all know the answer to that. Like, yeah, but sir, what answer do you think it is? So then he pulls out excerpts of Meg's transcript where she testified that she had to sit across Tory and it's really hard. She doesn't want to look weak. That's why she wasn't like so opened up in the morning, because she want to look like she's strong. She doesn't want to keep giving away her power. She's given enough power. So of course that's not verbatim, but that's pretty much the gist of what she said on the stand. And so again, a clip of that a specific piece of that testimony was put on the overhead. So then the DA asked, why would she lie? So when you do opening statements, a lot of times you have themes. So you'll hear like one slick line and people will say it all the time. That's the theme. So I'm assuming his theme is Meg really has no reason to lie. So why would she lie is what I'm assuming. I was trying to pick up what the theme is, because we're all taught to kind of make a theme because it connects with the jurors and they can consistently think about it, like certain phrases and stuff. So then the DA said, Meg said at the time of the incident, she and Tory were close, had been hooking up. Remember how the whole Gayle King thing happened and she was denying messing with him in that manner, but then all of a sudden the DA didn't have no problem saying, oh, they were hooking up. But I digress. Why would she say that Tory shot her and it wasn't true? That was the next question to the jury. Ask yourself if that makes sense. Remember, she told the jury she didn't even want to come forward. She wanted to protect the people in that car. Then Meg described, he goes on, the prosecutor is DA Bot. DAA, DDA? I think it's DDA they call him. I don't know what they call him, but it's basically the prosecutor or the people. So then Meg described the hip hop industry as a boys club, and that if you fall out with the hip hop industry, it can ruin your entire career. So she testified to that apparently, and so the prosecution brought that forward. So then she said, since the incident, Meg has been subject to hate. She's been subject to ridicule. She's been dragged online. She said folks don't believe her. Meg testified that, quote, they took the side of this man and have been giving her hell for the last 3 years, end quote. So his whole point is, why would somebody lie and go through all of this? So that's what he's trying to drill into the juror's head. Regardless of what inconsistencies I guess you might see, Meg is credible, because that doesn't even make sense to even take it this far. That's kind of what he's saying. So then he brings up a jury instruction. So there's a jury instruction that says a single witness testimony of one witness can prove any fact. So basically, he said, if you believe Meg and what she said, the case is over. Because Meg said that Tory shot her. So if you believe her under this jury instruction, you ain't got to consider nothing else if you don't want to. If you believe she was credible, then the case is over, and that's enough. All the elements to be proven. So then the prosecution puts up Kelsey Harrison, puts a picture up of her, and then says, then versus now. So that was his topic. So he said, you saw Kelsey in court. Something happened to Kelsey between the September statement of 2022 and when she got to court. So then the prosecution says somebody got to her. So he insinuated something happened as to why she was testifying that way, and said maybe she did take that bribe money. Yes, the prosecutor said maybe she took the bribe money and that's why she was acting that way. Then the prosecutor brought up, she recalled mundane details. She was able to recall where everyone was seated in the car, but mysteriously, she got, quote, courtroom amnesia whenever he asked questions about Tory Lanez. And that is kind of true. She knew detail by detail about what happened in Kelsey's house. She knew detail. She did know a lot of details that were very, very minor. And then when he would ask questions, or I think it was the woman, DA Ty, when she would ask questions, she was like, I don't remember. I don't recall. What's your name? I ain't sure. Like, she was really, she didn't know. So, yeah. And then he said, getting her to admit that Tory offered her money was like pulling teeth. And so then he says, the DA says, the real Kelsey is the one EJ described, the fun-loving friend that wouldn't hurt anybody. Kelsey was thinking only about Meg at that shooting at 4:27 a.m. You recall the urgent text? She texted Justin and said, help, 911. Tory has shot Meg. He said, I know you don't believe that Kelsey is some type of mastermind, meaning that immediately after this happened, if you're trying to say she's the shooter, why would she text and say that and just try to frame Tory? Like, that's your first mind, let me frame Tory. So the prosecution says you have to think she's some type of mastermind. That's the reason why she sent that text. Said the defense saying that Kelsey is the shooter just does not make any sense. So then the prosecutor says, well, where's Justin? Because we all know Justin was the one that they were waiting on, I guess, to testify. He didn't show up. Justin is the one that received the text message, and he is Meg's bodyguard. So the prosecutor said, well, where's Justin? And where's Justin? I don't, nobody's talking about where Justin is. And then he says, that's someone. Oh, he mentions the prosecutor says the defense has offered a lot of bribes in this case. That's how he premised the where's Justin at. He said what a lot of people had kind of been thinking, I guess. Or maybe he'd been online lurking, because he did say that. He was like, it just seems like the defense, they have a history of offering bribes. So where's Justin? So I agree with you, course correction. I definitely agree with you. I wouldn't have. And the defense, too, on the other side, I think they could have both did better. But we'll talk about that later. So then he says, in the beginning, the prosecutor said that we were going to hear from Justin. And I think I may have told you guys, when you do an opening statement, you have to, if you don't deliver in closing statements, you need to either try to clean that up, because if you don't, the other side is going to say, oh, I thought they said they was going to show this and they was going to show that, but we see they weren't able to show it. So the prosecution basically insinuating that Justin didn't show up, but it of course wasn't no volition of their own. It was probably due to the defense, but we weren't able to deliver that, and we're going to acknowledge that we weren't able to. And then he just moved right along, but he was able to cover that portion that he was not able to deliver. So then the DA then like showed body cam, like oh, I'm sorry, the DA showed excerpts of Kelsey. So he cut out and did excerpts of Kelsey on the screen. And when he did those excerpts, it said Kelsey was basically saying that she immediately was concerned about Meg. She wasn't concerned about herself. Because if you recall, Kelsey got pictures and she allegedly woke up and had bruises all over her. Well, it wasn't alleged. We seen her bruises. But she had pictures of bruises all over her body. She had a patch of hair coming out of her head. And so she said she wasn't even concerned about her injuries because all she cared about was Megan. So again, the prosecution is trying to establish that Kelsey cared about Megan so much because that was her best friend. So that's what they're trying to establish, which takes away the whole why would Kelsey try to shoot Meg if they were so close. So that's what they were trying to do. So then the DA showed the body cam of Kelsey, and I talked about that before. It's a body cam where Kelsey is, once she's ordered out of the car, she's on the ground. They handcuffed her. They have her roll over. And when she gets up, they have them go to the building. All of them had different officers that were responsible for them. So when they get up, they face the apartment building. And then you can hear Kelsey ask, Meg, are you okay? So again, that's another reason why, that's another way the prosecution is saying, let me see. 1 second, y'all. My husband's texting me. That's another way that they're trying to show that Kelsey cared about Meg. Okay. So then they also talk about the prosecution proceeds to continue on this line of how much Kelsey cared. What up, Dovine for Renee? To say how much the way Kelsey cared about her was in the back seat after Meg got shot. Kelsey sitting in the back seat, and basically Meg has her leg on Kelsey, and so all the blood and stuff was all over Kelsey's legs and all of that. So when you look at the body cam, you can see the blood dripping like all down Kelsey's leg. You can see, I guess it was blood dripping from her chin, but it was definitely blood all like over her legs and stuff. And that was from Meg dripping on her. So that was another point that they were cool and they weren't beefing. So it doesn't make sense to try to say that Kelsey is the one that shot her and Kelsey was the one that was catering and taking care of her. And then he says on cross, there was an insinuation that the DA pressured Kelsey or unduly influenced her in making a statement, and said that judge, y'all heard the interview and the DA barely said anything to Kelsey. So they took away any myth that the only reason why Kelsey said what she said in the September interview is because she felt pressured. That she felt pressured in any way. Hold on. And thank y'all so much for the cash apps and all of that good stuff. I'm trying to get y'all the blow by blow. I know people are giving snippets, but this is what I do, so I can appreciate opening and closing and all of that. And I think you guys should have a visual of what happened. So they take away that myth. So then the prosecution said it was a sad story that they were best friends on the date of the incident, but now they're not friends anymore. But that friendship ended after the shooting. It did not end because of the shooting. So the prosecution made it clear that the friendship between Kelsey and Meg did not end because of the shooting. It just ended after the shooting. And the reasoning is because Meg did tell the DA that Kelsey took hush money, and I guess that's why she wasn't talking. And the prosecution basically said that Meg thought the worst of her best friend and it hurt her. And you can look at that. I'm busting you. What is the name? Busting Back. Busting Back is a diss track from Kelsey against Meg. And it's garbage, but it does have little lines in it or whatever that kind of tells you why they fell out and all of that. If you guys got some free time to look at that. See, I didn't know nothing about these people. I ain't know nothing about this case. And I had to look at most of the stuff when I was here when they was talking about it. I was like, what diss track they talking about? What they talking about? And I only really knew Savage from Meg Thee Stallion. I didn't really know her songs. I'm gonna have to be totally honest. And I ain't know nothing from Tory. My son just sent me something from Tory yesterday. I said, oh, okay, he really can rap. I'm still listening to stuff from the 90s. I'm still listening to Jodeci, Boys to Men and them. I'm still listening to Tupac. I listen to Tupac before every trial. That's what hypes me up and gets me in the zone. I don't even listen to none of this stuff now. So I'm really like, when I say I'm neutral because I could care less. I don't even know these people. So yeah. So anyway, moving right along. So then there's corroborating evidence with Kelsey is what the prosecution, they do a list on the screen of corroborating evidence of Kelsey. The text messages to Justin, the dish track from Kelsey, the photos of Meg's injuries. Meg's team was contacted by Kelsey immediately to let them know what happened. The video cam, the body cam, EJ King's testimony. And then the prosecution mentions as it pertains to the diss track, because mind you, the prosecution is the one that first introduced a line of the diss track that Kelsey had done. So the prosecution said, as it pertains to the diss track, the defendant tried to just give the jury one line. They tried to mislead you, jurors. They tried to mislead you. How does that make you feel? How does it make you feel that people are just trying to mislead you? Like, how does that make you feel? Kelsey said in the interview that she just wanted to free herself. She wanted to tell her truth. And then she did tell her truth, and something happened where she gets on the stand and acts like she has courtroom amnesia. And we don't know what that something is. But of course, they left it open for the jurors to assume what it was. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, we got Justin didn't show up. We never heard from Quan. Now we got Kelsey acting the way she acting. It was information provided that allegedly there was an offer for $1 million for each one not to talk. We know the record labels are involved. Maybe that's why people aren't showing up. That's what they wanted them to think. So then the prosecution goes to what's called consciousness of guilt. So with consciousness of guilt, he goes over that is the strategy of the defendant. He says the strategy of this defendant has been to silence the witnesses against them. So that goes towards your consciousness of guilt. If you don't want people to testify, you don't want people to say certain, your actions. Sometimes your actions on how you move shows your consciousness of guilt. So they talked about that and consciousness of guilt. So then the transcript of the jail call was put up by the prosecution of Tory's jail call. And Tory was apologizing on the jail call. He mentioned that he was drunk. He never said what he did. He never said that he shot at anybody or none of that. But the prosecution wants you to infer that that's what he was talking about, because he apologized to Kelsey on that call. He mentioned that he was drunk, that when he went to Kylie's house, he had taken 5 shots. So before they walked in the door, he had to take 5 shots just walking in the door of liquor. So then he said, quote, I don't even remember what the argument was about. So, of course, the prosecution is going to keep on hammering in on that, because there's been back and forth on what the argument was really about. You got one side saying that you got the prosecution saying the argument was because Meg insulted him and his artistry and it bruised his ego. You got the defense saying it was because she was jealous of Kylie and she was jealous of Kylie, and it was a jealousy thing about women and sleeping with women, and you know, the salacious portion. That's what the defense wants it to be, where the argument lies. But nevertheless, he says Tory in the transcript, because they put up the transcript again from the jail call. Tory said he's gotten a lot of backlash because of this. Well, the backlash is going to come from him. So he's still in jail. Everybody doesn't know about it yet. But what happened is Kelsey insinuated in that call that it was getting out, but Meg's team is handling it about this whole incident. Because remember, TMZ was there, and TMZ always there. So TMZ was able to post a video or a partial video of them in their arrest. So it was getting out already. So it was mentioned by Kelsey, it's getting out. And Tory basically said, I'm going to be the one to face the backlash. She's not going to really face the backlash like that. And then Tory did say in that, I never would have done it if I wasn't so drunk. You know, I would never done that, stuff if it wasn't. So it was a lot of insinuations. They trying to interpret what he meant in the phone call, but he was very vague on what it was. But depending on which side you're on, you can always read it, and you'll see how the defense interprets that jail conversation when I get to the defense. So then the prosecution goes to the location of the gun. Mind you, they did this for an hour and 15 minutes. This is how long their opening was. Their closing, I'm sorry. So they go to the location of the gun. According to the body cam, the gun was right where the defendant was. So they show like snippets of the body cam that shows that Tory was in the front seat and the gun was like on the floor by his feet. So they showed that the gun was by him and that there was no evidence at trial that Kelsey was ever in the front seat. So Kelsey has always been in the back seat. When they first left Kylie's house, she was in the back seat. When they pulled over on Sunset Boulevard, she was in the back seat. When the fight happened, the shooting happened, she was in the back seat because she had Meg's leg on her. So how is the gun in the front? So that came out. And so then they mentioned Sean Kelly. Now, what's interesting is this independent witness that came on, Sean Kelly, that gave the bombshell type of testimony, the prosecution didn't even call him. But I guess they said, heck, we'll utilize some of it because he actually helped them in a way. But what was interesting, obviously, because Meg said that there was no fight, Sean Kelly said it was a big fight and that it was a for real, like, violent fight, pulling hair and all of that. The prosecution just totally jumped over that. Like, we can't eat that because Meg basically said it wasn't a fight and she was on the stand adamant that there was not a fight. So he says, Sean Kelly, let's put up Sean Kelly. You guys remember Sean Kelly. Sean Kelly described this scene as a chaotic scene. He heard 4 to 5 gunshots total. He saw a muzzle flash by the female. That's why everybody's saying that Kelsey had the gun, because she saw a muzzle flash by the female. But he said the muzzle flash was going into the vehicle. So he did say that. Sean Kelly said, yes, he saw the muzzle flash by the females, closest to the females, but it was going in the vehicle. But there was evidence that showed, investigating the car and all of that, there were no gunshots in the vehicle. So basically, the prosecution put in doubt that he even saw that by the females, because there's no way that it would have been shot in the vehicle, because we would have had bullet holes, we would have had something. And then they say Kelly said he saw the shorter guy with an object in his hand outstretched and fired 4 to 5 shots while engaging in torrent verbal abuse against Meg. Because that's what he said. The guy is like from Europe, Britain. He from somewhere. He got a really thick accent. And he was like, he was just waging all these torrent comments. Just tolerant comments to the young lady that was hurt. So yeah, so he was very abusive, angry, agitated. He described him as a little angry person. He really did. That's what Sean Kelly did. I agree. You can't run from the bad facts. You're supposed to turn them your way, or you say them so quick and make it seem like they don't matter. But to totally ignore it, I think was not good. To totally ignore that, You know what I'm saying? He could have played it down or tried to play it down like they were arguing more than anything. I think Kelsey mentioned a bump or two, and they bumped each other, and maybe because of one of them was so inebriated, they were trying to control the other one. Like Meg kept jumping out of the car, and Kelsey was really just trying to keep Meg. You know what I'm saying? But see, that's what happened when you go to opening and you commit to certain facts. You need to be a little bit more general because as your case progresses and the evidence goes forward, you can conform your facts at closing. But when you that's the defense's problem to me in this case. You got to be careful what you say and be specific to them facts. Some things when you know it's a little iffy, you make it where you give yourself room so it doesn't look, because I would think as a juror, why he good morning. I don't know. As a juror, I would think, why you just not mention this? How you just gonna act like this never happened? You know? But anyway, so that was a good assessment. So then after Meg was shot, they said she was in the street bleeding. That's what Sean Kelly testified to. So then they talked about the gun. The gun came with the defendant. They said the gun did not come with Kelsey or Meg. They didn't have a gun that night. So Meg testified that she had a bikini on and Kelsey had a bikini on. So basically, where the hell they about to put a gun at? Like, obviously, they didn't have a gun on them. And then EJ was the one that packed their bags, and EJ never said he saw a gun in their bag. So they're saying this gun couldn't have came from them because there's no evidence that the gun could have even been around them. So then, of course, they get into the DNA. That's been the biggest thing, the DNA. And this is the first time I ever heard a prosecutor try to downplay DNA. I'm like, they use DNA all the time to try to get you. But anyway, so they said they said the defendant's DNA was not on the magazine, that he was excluded from that. But if he picked up a gun, he wouldn't be touching the magazine anyway. But it was either he wasn't excluded or included when it came to the gun because his DNA can be on there. So that means the defense can't say that there was no DNA on the gun for him. They just couldn't tell if it was or not. So the gun was swabbed, it was mixed DNA, and they said it could have been all males on the gun. It could have been all males. We just don't know. And I think the DNA has been the most confusing to the public because they just don't understand kind of how the DNA works. And so he reiterated that the crime lab for LA was accredited. That was some back and forth they had during trial. The crime lab for LA PD is accredited, but the expert that the defense used is not an accredited crime lab. So they kind of said our expert, who is from an accredited lab. So they was gotta throw a shade like y'all got the Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck type of expert, but ours is accredited. So yeah, so then they mention that. So then they go back and they talk about Tory's verified Instagram page. Remember? Tory in a shade room. See, this social media gets folks. So then they put up and they said in the shade room how Tory responded to somebody else's who said Kelsey is the one that's the shooter. And from Tory's verified account, it said that's not true. Kelsey didn't shoot her. So they put that up. Like, well, when you change your mind, sir? Because on here, your verified account says she wasn't the shooter. Now all of a sudden she's conveniently the shooter. So then the prosecution said they go over with circumstantial evidence and direct evidence. So they say that direct evidence is their testimony, which is true. That's Meg's testimony, Kelsey's, and you got Sean Kelly. So then they said the circumstantial evidence would be stuff like the text messages, the attempted bribes, jail calls, him apologizing, location of the gun, firearm evidence. All that is circumstantial. You basically are deducing certain conclusions from that, but it's not like direct, like DNA that said you definitely were on here or direct testimony. So they talked about direct evidence and circumstantial. So then he says, I'm going to end with this. It's something called Occam's razor. The idea that in trying to understand something to get the necessary information out of the way is the To get the unnecessary information out of the way is the fastest way to the truth or to the best explanation. So he said, you guys need to, all these red herrings, all of this fodder that you guys have out here, you guys need to cut away at that and just focus on what's important here, that Meg got shot. You got the defense talking about the baby. So apparently in opening, which I missed, he talked about the baby and how the baby, that's so loud. And how the baby apparently and Meg were messing with each other. So they basically did put kind of her. It's different than like when you have cases of sexual assaults, because you can't, in Michigan anyway, you can't put their character for having that type of stuff on the stand. But this is an assault case. So they were able to try to put in her propensity, I guess, to sleep with a bunch of people. And I don't know, of course, they'll try to make it seem like they're not making it as a character thing. They're making it seem like that's the crux of the argument. You know what I'm saying? So they're switching it over to that's the crux of the argument. And then he ends it by saying another excerpt of Meg's testimony. And he says, essentially, Meg said there was a quote she said on the stand where she said she wished he would have just shot and killed her if she knew she would have to go through all of this torture. So he put her quote on there again because it's basically, why would she lie, right? Back to the thing. This, you tie it back up with your thing. Why would she lie if she's going to go through all of this? She said she would rather have just died than to go through all this torture on the stand. So then the prosecution charges the jury and says, quote, hold him accountable for shooting Meg over nothing more than a bruised ego. That was the end of his opening. So that's the opening. So then the defense comes on. And, you know, most defense attorneys, and he's not finished, but he did a good hour too. So these people, see, in Michigan and in a lot of federal courts, they give you time limits, but apparently he don't get no time limit. So this might be just as long today as it was, you know, the same length of time anyway as yesterday, because the defense never closed. So now he's had time to go back, go over his notes and figure out how he about to hammer it. See, that's another thing too. You breaking like this and letting people go home and re-review their notes and all that stuff, that gives them, I mean, it's beneficial, obviously, to the defense. Now he can go through this man's his opening more thoroughly overnight and almost probably revise half of his doggone, his closing, and almost revise his entire closing, right? He got time to change up and switch it up. This judge gives them a lot of opportunity to fix their stuff with going home after 3 and 4 hours. So anyway, the defense comes up, as most defense attorneys do. You let the prosecution know that we don't have the burden. He basically could have sat there on his hands, never did a cross, never called a witness, never put up one piece of evidence if he wanted to, because it's not his burden of proof. But the reason why he did cross-examination, bring his own witnesses, all of that, was because he said he wanted the jury to see the whole picture. But he didn't have to do that. But he wants to make sure the jury is clear on the whole picture. He said, the prosecution has not come close to proving this case. He said the prosecution just got up and all they're doing is making conclusory statements. There must be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So then he goes through the jury instructions and put it on the heading on what beyond a reasonable doubt is. He said, you just listened to an hour and 15 minutes and only heard facts that he wanted you to speculate, such as the gun was in the center console. It's unfortunate that someone got shot, but my client ain't the shooter. I'm sorry, man, you got shot, but my client ain't do it. So then he asked the jury to think about his client. He's been going through this for 2.5 years. He said that in his opening, he told the jury that this case was about jealousy and relationship. He said the prosecutor wants the jury to believe that for some reason, that the reason why some people didn't come to court was because of them. But that's just simply not true. Where's Jaquan? So then they used the same they used the same thing against the prosecutor when they said, well, where's Justin? So then he said, well, where's Jaquan? Now we know Jaquan was there earlier. I don't think the jury knew it. But he was like, well, where's Jaquan? Why didn't the people call him? So then he said, Sean Kelly said there was a fight. So who's being truthful here? Who's being misleading? Sean Kelly makes the 911 call and says two girls are fighting and the big guy came out to separate them. The prosecution is trying to mislead you and saying Sean Kelly never mentioned the shooter. But the officers never asked Mr. Kelly about who the shooter was. The prosecutor didn't call Stogner. How don't you not call your own lead detective? I want you guys to think about this, jury. How do you not call your lead detective on this case? That was actually a good question because I'm like, how do you not? I've never seen where they don't call their OIC. Then he says, Stogner investigation. Common sense would have been for him to ask who the shooter was. Stogner never even asked who the shooter was, y'all. What did you see? He also said Kelly testified that after the separation of the girls, one of the girls went back to the car. So that came up. So after Quan came out of the car and separated the girls, allegedly one of the girls came in the car. Now it's been two different theories on who it was that came in the car. Of course, the defense is saying that Kelsey came in the car, which means she probably went and got a gun when she came in the car. But it seems more plausible that it was Meg that came and sat in the front seat, in the front driver's passenger seat, because Sean Kelly testified that all he saw was her legs kicking, like her legs kicking out. So they were still fighting. So she, like, the door is open and you're sitting on the edge of the seat or whatever, and she was still kicking out of the door because she's still fighting Kelsey. And then eventually she's out the car again and they all start fighting. Well, the defense is making it as if, according to how they're interpreting it, that Kelsey came back in the car and that was her opportunity to get, go get a weapon. So then he goes on to say, Kelsey, he said he heard a noise, thought it was fireworks, but it was shots. Sean Kelly tells Stogner that Tory was in the car when the first shot was heard. That's another issue with Sean Kelly's testimony, because at first, apparently, he told one of these officers that when he first heard the gunshot noise, that Tory was still in the car. As the testimony progressed, he basically said, no, when I first heard this gunshots, everybody was out of the car. So they were going back and forth, on whether Tory was in the car, Tory was out of the car, Tory was in the car, Tory was out of the car. So that was a really big thing. So the defense, of course, they're going to stick to the one that in their mind is best to their client, to say that he was in the car when the first fire, the first, noise that he thought was fireworks went off. Then he said, why didn't the prosecutor call Stogner in this case? He said it again. He said after Sean Kelly talked to Stogner, he never mentioned his client with a gun. So what he's saying is, apparently 9 months ago, the DA interviewed Sean Kelly. And then now all of a sudden after this interview, I don't think Sean Kelly put that in a statement, but I told you guys, if you see my Instagram video, that it was very apparent that the defense were not expecting the testimony that Tory had an object in his hand and that the muzzle shots came from him 4 to 5 times and that he was angry and all of that. And, wailing it around. He did like hand gestures. So I don't really think that the defense, I'm pretty certain because they were trying to call him as a hostile witness. So I'm pretty certain they weren't prepared for that testimony. And because they weren't prepared for that testimony, they made it seem like, oh, well, at first he never put the gun in my client's hand at all. And all of a sudden he talks to the DA and now his testimony is different when he get on the stand. So they're trying to make it seem like somehow they got to Sean Kelly, just like the prosecution made it seem like some of these witnesses aren't showing up because of the defense. So No, he did not say Tory shot in the air, and I don't know. And if you can show me a transcript where he said that, then I will recant. What he said was there were muzzle flashes everywhere coming from Tory. He did hand gestures. His hand gestures were all over the place. Yes, his hand gestures looked like he may or may not have been pointing in the air at some points of his moving around with his hands. However, I think people just interpreted based on his hand gestures. There was nobody that said, no attorney said, let the record reflect that he is shooting the gun up in the air, which would have confirmed it on the transcript. So everyone is kind of just assuming that there, but it did sound like he was kind of shooting around wild. That's what it looked. That's what it looked like. But again, he was using hand gestures. You guys in the public can't see hand gestures on a transcript. You should always do your transcript as if you're going to appeal. I think Tory Lanez, if he were to lose, he has appealable issues in this case. I think some of the evidence that was let in should not have been let in. I think them allegedly getting a late discovery, that's a problem. We don't have ambush litigation in this here United States of America. So I think he has some appealable issues. Therefore, when you go to the Court of Appeals, they don't hear testimony. They only hear your argument. They look at your brief. You're required to do a brief and you attach the transcript. None of those justices can see hand gestures in the air. That's why it's your job to say, let the record reflect that he's doing A, B, C, D, and E. And then the judges say, so reflected. And the reason why they will do that is so that if it goes to the Court of Appeals, who only has the privy of reading your transcript, they know what happened. All they're going to hear is Sean Kelly say, oh, shots were, the muzzle shots were going everywhere. That's what they're going to hear. They're not going to see it was all up in the air and shooting up in the air. They're not going to do that because it was hand gestures. You guys get what I'm saying? Yes, there are definitely conflicting testimonies. So I'm gonna move forward. I know some of y'all might not like this, but I'm just telling you what happened in closing. I'm on the defense now, so if you guys are on defense, you guys should be hitting that like button and everything because you should be liking what he's saying. So moving right along, hope I explained that well. So he says, he talks about the sound. We all heard the gunshot sound. That's how the prosecution opened it. And there were like 3 shots, and then there was a pause. And he said, what happened after the first 3 shots? And then it was a pause, then it was more shots. He said, then the defense says his client was holding Kelsey's hand to stop her from shooting Meg. This is where my problem comes in at with this. Let me hold this. I'm gonna hold it for a minute when I say how I think how the defense should have played this case. But he said, think about what's more likely to start a shooting. Someone being ridiculed about their artistry or jealousy over your best friend cheating with your man. So again, he's saying all this was about some community pain, basically. It's not about bruised egos or artistry or anything like that. So then he says, Sean Kelly said that they were all struggling over a gun. But if they were all struggling over a gun, why didn't Quan have GSR? So basically now you're somewhat saying, Sean Kelly, I want you to believe some of his testimony, but not all of it. Because Sean did say all of them were struggling. So that would take away the whole theory of it was just Tory and it was just Kelsey. Because they're the only ones that had GSR on their hands, right? So then the defense goes on to Meg the Stallion, and says he put up a jury instruction basically and said if you decide that a witness deliberately lied in this case, you should consider not believing anything this witness says. That's a jury instruction. So if they believe she lied in this case, then y'all, we all know she did. Y'all know I don't victim shame at all, but she did lie. Like if you got this person saying there was a huge fight, but her and Kelsey are saying that it wasn't. This man is an independent witness. He don't even know y'all. He never saw y'all a day in his life. He never saw y'all a day in his life. You know what I'm saying? So he don't have no reason to lie about what he observed. So clearly, I believe if I was a juror that there was a fight. So if you get on the stand, Meg, and you say there wasn't a fight, that means you're saying things that I can't believe. So should I trust anything that you said? Right? Yes, Empress, she lied about it. We cannot negate that fact that she was dishonest. The whole dance be dance. Nobody heard that. Kelsey says she never. Now Kelsey didn't even corroborate her on that. Sean Kelly said he heard a lot of yelling, but it was a lot of cussing each other out. He didn't hear that. Nobody heard that, but Meg. And she said that it came about because remember, there was a text message not a text message, a post where Meg said her back was turned. So then when she talks to the prosecutor the second time, she basically says that she turned her head around and she saw, and it made, because he said dance be dance, and that's what made her turn her head around even though her back was turned. And so that's where that whole dance be dance allegedly came from. When she turned her head to see, like when he said that, that's what made her turn around to look at him, and that's when she saw that he shot her. So anyway, moving right along. So then the defense goes on to say, he asked Meg, the defense attorney said, Meg, did you and Kelsey have a fight? And Meg denied it. Why isn't his client charged with assault if he attacked Kelsey? That's what people were asking. Remember, they're saying Kelsey's bruises came from Tory grabbing Kelsey out of the vehicle by her hair and then beating her up, I guess, before when she broke her nail and she broke her chain fell off. So why isn't she? Why do you think, if the DA really believes that my client beat Kelsey up like that, why isn't he charged with assault? People have been asking that in the public. And that's actually a good question. And he said because it didn't happen. He challenged the jurors to hold the prosecutor on their rebuttal to explain why Meg and Sean's testimony are so inconsistent. He said, I'm going to hold you guys on rebuttal. I want you to hold them accountable to explain why Sean Kelly, because mind you, the prosecutor glossed over the fight thing and some of the different things that Sean Kelly said. See, the prosecutor couldn't even use the fact that allegedly they all beat him up because they're not even acknowledging there was a fight of any kind. So then they said, remember Kelsey went to the car and came back out the car. What did she do when she was in the car? Meg said she was ready to leave because her wig was coming off. EJ kept telling her to leave. She did not want to leave. And they're talking about out of Kylie's house. Do you believe that Meg Pete was not upset that his client was in the pool with Kylie? Meg said EJ left. Meg was not being truthful about that. EJ was pissed off because EJ got on the stand and said, Meg is telling everybody that I left her there, and that's why she had to leave with Quan. He said that really pisses me off because I look out for Meg, and I would have never left her there, and I knew she was drunk unless, she wanted me to. So EJ said, no, I did not leave her there because Meg testified the reason why she rode with Quan was because EJ left. They were able to dispel that with EJ, that no, I was there. We drove off at the same time. That was their choice to go with Quan. So then they say, Meg said Tory was in the vehicle when they left all together. Another inconsistency, because Meg did say that when they left Kylie's house, it was Meg, Tory, Kelsey, and Quan was driving. And then they never came back. Well, EJ testified and Kelsey testified that that's not true. That when they first left Kylie's house, it was Meg, Kelsey, and then Quan was driving. They drove a little bit. Remember, Meg came out barefoot. She realized she left her Louis Vuitton slippers. So allegedly, that's why they went back. But, it's alleged that she just wanted to check out and see what the hell Tory was doing because she wanted Tory to leave with them and Tory didn't want to. So Meg goes back to get her slipper. They get into this big old argument. Kylie Jenner got all them security and gates and stuff. You ain't about to go up in them Jenner and Kardashian houses and think you going to act like you from the projects. So apparently Kylie allegedly put them out the house. Meg said that they never turned around and went back, that Tory left with them originally. Apparently, that's been disputed by Kelsey, who was her best friend at the time, and also that was disputed by EJ, because EJ said, no, I didn't leave her there. We left together. And when they left, and EJ said when he left, it was Meg and Kelsey in the vehicle. So then the defense goes on to say Meg said that she wasn't involved in the argument in the car that was between Kelsey and his client. She was so tired of their argument that she wanted to get out of the car. When the incident occurred, Meg said she walked to the front of the car and saw his client shoot over the door, and she didn't know where Kelsey was. Other witnesses said she went to the back of the car. Wouldn't it also be important for the investigator to track the blood trail? We would know where she came from. So basically, the defense attorney said, well, if we didn't wanted to know where Meg was specifically outside of that car, she was dripping, she was bleeding and leaking from her foot. Why didn't anybody take pictures to go follow the blood trail? Then we would have known where she came from. So then the defense attorney said, wouldn't it also be important for the investigator? I'm sorry, I just said that. So then she says, Meg took an oath. Meg took an oath, and Meg lied under oath. Then he goes through the dance thing and said, when did this story come about? And said she came up with it after the interview, like I just told you guys. Then he said she told Stogner she didn't know that she was really shot, so didn't want to make false allegations. So apparently that's what she said in the second interview. The reason why she didn't give a lot of information in the first one is because at first she didn't even know she got shot, and she didn't want to make false allegations to anybody. Of course, they're going to use that to make it seem like you don't even know who shot you. So what you talking about? So then they come out with the why would Meg lie? These are both artists. So the defense flips the prosecution's theme and say, let me answer the question for you. So you don't even got to ponder on why would Meg lie. Let me tell y'all why Meg would lie. These are both artists. What is more newsworthy? Kelsey shot Meg or Tory shot Meg? Meg misleads this jury saying it's been so bad for her. But since this incident, she's won a Grammy. She's been #1 on billboards. And then he said, who it's bad for is Tory, who was bigger than Meg the Stallion. I ain't know about that, but, I get it. That's his claim. So then he says, she claimed nerve damage. So apparently when Meg was on the stand, one of the injuries she said she claimed because of it was nerve damage. And so the doctor came on, and the defense was able to ask the doctor, did Meg have nerve damage? And the doctor said no. So that was another lie. Then he said, Meg is playing with your emotions. People were advising her that she should come forward, because we all know Meg wasn't even going to come forward. He said, you didn't hear any evidence that Tory was on probation. So that was another issue, because Meg was saying the whole $1 million incident was the $1 million bribe happened because Tory said that he was on probation. What came out was Tory was never on probation. Apparently in 2017, he got in trouble for something. The judge made sure, I know what it is, but the judge said, the jury can't hear what that something is, because they did a jury instructive for them to know the difference between probation and diversion. He was on a diversion program where with diversion, how it works is the court will give you certain conditions that you have to meet. Usually you work this out with the prosecutor. They gave him certain conditions that he had to meet. And once he fulfilled those obligations, the case would be dismissed. So it's like you never really plead guilty. You never, it's like it never happened as long as you do what you're supposed to do. So it's like you may have obligations like probation, but you're not on probation, because probation is like really a sentence, So he never pled guilty. He did whatever they told him to do. So this happened like sometime in 2017. And by April of 2017, he was off of probation. I mean, not probation, Lord forgive me. Now I'm saying that. He was off of the diversion program, and his case was dismissed. So when Meg said, he said that he didn't want to get in trouble because he's already on probation, They said that had to be a lie because he wasn't on probation. So that's what they was trying to say. But we don't know. He could have told her he was on probation. Who says I'm on a diversion program? That don't sound tough. I'm on a diversion program. I just have to complete 20 hours and I'm off. So, I mean, he could have said that. But again, it looked like it was a lie. That's what she was told. So then he said she lied because she had an image. She didn't want to say she got caught cheating with Kelsey's man, and that's why he got into it. And that's why she got into it with her best friend. Basically, she ain't want to look like a scallywag. That's what he said. That's the reason. That's the reason why she ain't want to look like a pass around in the industry. So she lied about it. That's what the defense is saying. So then he goes on to Kelsey Harris's talks about her. The defense says if Kelsey did not have a reason to invoke her Fifth Amendment right, the judge would not have allowed it. So that's another thing. The prosecution never even talked about Kelsey invoking her Fifth Amendment and getting use immunity. So he says Kelsey came in with her lawyer, says she want to invoke the Fifth. What happens is when somebody wants to invoke the Fifth, they go back in chambers. The lawyers are not there except for her lawyer. So it's Kelsey, the lawyer, and the judge. They go back in chambers. Kelsey says, listen, blah, 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 blah. And the judge says, yes, I believe that. That's incriminating. So therefore, you can invoke your Fifth Amendment right not to testify because it will incriminate you if you go on the stand and say that. So what the prosecution did was say, we'll give you use immunity. So that means that your statement cannot be used against you or evidence, derived from your statement. But apparently she wanted transactional immunity or absolute immunity, and the prosecution would not agree to that. So the defense made it very, very clear that, wanted to talk about it. Said, that Kelsey says she lied in her interview to protect herself. And he says once Kelsey found out that the GSR was on her and that there was an independent witness, which would have been Sean Kelly, she suddenly wanted to meet with the DA. Now, all this time she wouldn't meet with the DA. So they said, oh, all of a sudden now she want to meet with the DA. She voluntarily agreed. She wanted to tell them her version of the story. So then says as soon as she invoked, the prosecution gave her immunity. The defense then pulled out the instructions for what immunity and what use immunity and transactional immunity is. I told you what use immunity is. Transactional immunity is basically you can't be prosecuted for anything that has to do with this transaction. So no matter what she says, no matter what she does, she just won't be prosecuted as it pertains to this incident. And so then the defense asked the question, why did the DA only give her would not give her transactional immunity and would only give her use immunity? So basically, if this case is going, she could still be prosecuted. So what happens with use immunity is she can still be prosecuted, but it has to be independent evidence outside of her statement. So the defense made sure to say, you think with use immunity, she was going to be honest? So the defense said, yeah, she's not going to. If they didn't give her total transactional immunity and her attorney let her know, if you perjure yourself, if they find independent evidence, if whatever, you can still be prosecuted in this case. The defense is like, she has a reason to lie and not be honest because she still has the probability, she still faces some probability of something happening to her as well. So, okay, Ivan says, I don't have respect for the team for trying to prosecute Tory and nobody else that was out on the scene. How can you truthfully say Tory was to blame for the entire situation? After hearing all of the evidence, I agree. I think all y'all was, but let's go with how I think. We know that Meg got shot. So I think that's the only thing everybody agreeing on at this. Well, some people still say she didn't, but there was a doctor that came up and showed x-rays, and the prosecution did show the pictures of her foot and all of that in the closing. But we have seen x-rays that she did have bullet fragments or metallic fragments in her foot. So then the defense says, you're relying on a witness who was drunk? Meg says she never got into an argument about cheating. Kelsey said this happened to her before. So he brings it up, that this ain't the first time. He said, who has motive here? So even though you don't have to prove motive, oftentimes the jury wants to know motive. So yeah, you don't have to prove motive, but motive can be one of the factors that like, why would Kelsey want to shoot her? I mean, why would Kelsey want to shoot her? Why would Tory want to shoot her? So the defense is saying Kelsey got more of a motive than what his client has. So then he goes on to say Kelsey had bruises on her hair and missing and is blaming his client for it. And then talks about how he only 5'2". Everybody was cracking up. It's like he's what, 5'2", and you're talking about he reached over the door and started shooting somebody. Like, get real. That's kind of like what's saying. What you're explaining doesn't even work with a 5'2" person. It was crazy. It's like, what? Everybody was laughing like, yeah, because he is kind of short. And then then the defense said the text message was self-serving. Said that, of course, if you send out a text message, you're gonna say somebody else shot him because it's a self-serving test. We don't have Justin to even verify any information. Allegedly, Justin said that he was told that Tory shot Meg, but we all know Justin didn't show up, so we don't know. All we have is the text message, and the defense said you can't rely on that text message because if I'm the shooter, I'm gonna text somebody and say somebody else shot. So then the jail call that we talked about earlier, he went through the jail call. So his attorney said if the client knew, you're saying that. So what the prosecution was basically saying is that the reason why Tory never just straight up said I did it was because he knew the phone calls were recorded. So he was very guarded with how he worded things. Well, the defense said, well, if he knew it was recorded, he wouldn't have talked at all. Like, under that logic, why would he say anything to incriminate himself? So then he said, if he shot Meg, why would he apologize to Kelsey? He said Tory was apologizing that he should not have opened his mouth about him and Meg. So he's saying, so like I said, the defense changed it over and said the real reason why he was apologizing is because all of this got started because he decided to say why he and Meg were arguing. Meg, did you tell her how you a sloppy friend and that you was messing with me and I messed with your homegirl first? So he's saying that's what he was apologizing for causing all this chaos by bringing that up. That's what his attorney said. So then he read the jury instructions on circumstantial evidence, and he said if you can draw two or more reasonable conclusions from the circumstantial evidence and one of those reasonable conclusions point to innocence and another to guilt, you must accept the one that points to innocence. So if there's two reasonable interpretations about anything, this jury instruction instructs that jury that if one of them says that he's innocent, then you need to go to the innocence because that's what the jury instruction is about. So then he talks about Officer Cabral and basically brings up how all these officers are supposed to be independent witnesses. They're supposed to be independent investigators, but ain't nothing independent about them. They're all pro DA. So he said Officer Cabral came with the video cam, the body cam, and you're able to hear, she's able to hear and able to testify that she heard Kelsey ask Meg if she's okay. But when I asked Officer Cabral, hey, did you hear when my client asked, hey, Mago, everything's going to be okay? Did you hear when my client said that? And Officer Cabral said no. So basically they hear what they want to hear for the DA, but they didn't hear nothing as it pertains to my client. These officers are supposed to be unbiased. So then he talks about Investigator Little, and she's the one that formed the foundation for the lyrics, and she was there for the interview for Kelsey, to show how her demeanor was and all of that. She was there for the interview and was able to observe the whole interview. And she said, the defense said, I asked her a question and I couldn't even walk away. And she couldn't even remember what my question was, or she didn't remember, she didn't recall. She said, none of these people are unbiased. And then the judge broke for the day. So that's kind of how that ended. So now he's going to pick up, and the next, they're starting at 9:45. I told y'all I won't be there for that, but I'm sure I'll get it. I left my number to get enough information from people or whatever. But that's how that ended. And then he has to continue. I'm assuming he probably has a good 20, 30 more minutes. And then after his testimony, there'll be rebuttal because the prosecution has the burden. So they're going to be the last person to give, to talk to the jury because it's their burden. So they're going to, of course, their rebuttal might be about an hour because they're going to try to unravel everything they said in the defense to take out any doubt out of folks' mind. But I'm curious to see how they're going to handle the inconsistencies with the whole fighting and arguing and all of that, because they're going to have to address it. So, so me personally, if I was the defense, I think I would have did this case in a whole different manner. This everybody has their way of doing it, how they want to do it. And it may be because the defense didn't have all the information until they got there. First of all, he should have never committed an opening that Kelsey was the shooter. You never box yourself in. Again, you may end up having new information that comes out where during trial, like what happened with Sean Kelly, where you need to tweak your argument a little bit. This is the practice of law. Some of this stuff is practicing. Like you come out like, oh, this worked for another client, but it may not work for this client. I think boxing her in. I think just generally saying he wasn't the shooter would have been fine. So then at the end, you could have said defense of others. That is a defense to all these charges I just named. If his argument now is there was a struggle because Kelsey originally shot the gun, and so he went over there trying to take it from her, he could have argued defense of others. I was just trying to protect him. I didn't do it on, I don't think that they can prove intent on any level. If any of these elements have to do with intent, I think it's willful, which is similar. I don't think the prosecution can prove that. But except for Meg trying to say dance, be dance if you believe that. But other than that, I don't think it's been proven in this case. But if it was a drunken, sloppy night, first of all, I just don't think it should have been brought. After listening to all this drama, this should have been a Netflix series and everybody could have made $1 million off of it. She could have had the video of her from TMZ, all this dash cam. This could have been a Hollywood film, and everybody could have got paid. But to get the state involved into this, and it's all this inconsistent testimony, and she was shot, and it's very, very unfortunate she was shot. But I don't really think she knows who shot her. This is just me. She's obviously been shot. But I don't think listening to the testimony, just sitting there listening to it, I don't think she really knows who shot her. And I believe that if Tory was really, if it happened the way he said it, then the defense more so should have generalized it, and then he could have been able to use a defense of others type of a theory where it just went off when I was trying to struggle. But to now bring it up and say, oh, it was a struggle, that doesn't take away your negligence. That don't take away your recklessness. Because you don't have to have intent. You don't even have to have intent to harm anybody under the prongs. You just have to be in that position where it could happen. So, and they did. They brought up, she's part of Rock Nation. That stuff came up. I don't know what that means to a jury. That she kind of was coached, like somebody just said, about with their team. I don't know what that would mean to a jury. As a layperson, if I'm an older white person, or it's one black older gentleman, it's a light-skinned gentleman on there, and now it's an older black woman. So the rest are not are white people, and some of them are older. I don't know if they know who they Meg Thee Stallion. I don't even know if they know any of these people. You know what I'm saying? It's just up in the air. I just would have done it different. Everybody, I don't ever want to look like I'm, because hindsight is always perfect vision. You know what I'm saying? But that's why you go to trial. My assistant goes to trial with me, or you have another associate co-chair, because they're supposed to, and he has an associate, but it doesn't look like his associate really does much. Maybe he's newer. But you have somebody that can catch things that you don't catch, but you never box yourself in a trial. You never make it seem like it's only one way that it could have happened, because then you have people like Sean Kelly that maybe he just wasn't asked the right question. Some people don't offer information unless you probe them for the information. You have to, when you use defense of others, typically you got to let the other side know. When you use any type of self-defense, type of a theory, you're supposed to tell the other side, in my state, they have to be prepared for a self-defense theory. No, his theory was that Kelsey shot him, from my understanding in the opening. Maybe I could be wrong because I wasn't there for opening. But his theory tended to point just to Kelsey. Don't box yourself. I would have made it seem like Meg could have did it. I would have made it seem like Quan could have did it. I don't care if he ain't got no GSR on his hands. You see what I'm saying? And the prosecution, I think the LAPD just dropped the ball. Like, y'all didn't investigate for real. You get up there like, no, I didn't ask that. No, I didn't record it. No, didn't ask that. I couldn't find Quan. I couldn't. How did Quan come yesterday, but y'all couldn't find him? How did y'all get like Justin? Y'all talked to him. Obviously, they obviously or whatever. Y'all didn't make sure he was on some type of witness detainer, so he would show up. None of it makes sense to me. Like, this was a sloppy investigation to me. So that's it. They knew where Justin was. That's what they may have him. Listen, your girl just, I said, and I literally, and I want everybody to know, and I know people don't like what I say, and that's fine. I was just sitting in the courtroom getting the information. I had never heard this track before. Last night, you can ask my husband, that was the first time I heard Tory. My son said Tory did a whole song where he explained what happened. That was the first time I ever heard that. I heard little bits. You know, I'm on social media, so I heard certain bits. I even had people before ask me to come on their platform about this, and I was like, I don't know nothing about this case, and I didn't come on there because I didn't do enough research. I ain't read the transcript from the preliminary examination. Somebody's supposed to email it to me. I didn't have that information. I literally went in there like a neutral person that didn't know nothing. I knew one song from Meg Thee Stallion and zero from Tory Lanez. And I didn't know any, I heard little things. I heard Meg was a liar. I heard that. I heard little things, but I didn't have any information. So when I tell you, I'm literally telling you from a unbiased perspective, I really am. So Janae said, if nothing else, the prosecution was too cocky, girl, can't even talk, and didn't do their due diligence. And that may be true, yes. So, yeah. I guess, yeah, I mean, and then I heard, and this is all just speculation, so I ain't trying, I ain't no speculative person like that, but I did hear he was an independent artist. I heard about Rock Nation wanting to sign him and him not wanting to be signed, so that was kind of like Meg Thee Stallion is signed with Rock Nation, so they kind of coached her. I've heard all of that, since this happened. It's all speculation. I mean, they didn't put up a Rock Nation person to say, yeah, we wanted to sign him. I'd have been like, did you want to sign him? Did he say that he wanted to remain independent? And he owns all his catalog, correct? And his catalog is worth $1 trillion, right? And you would want a piece of that, right? Because you're a business person. They're gonna say yes. You would have wanted a piece of that. Just to put the doubt in their mind. If I'm gonna bring up Rock Nation, why bring up Rock Nation and we don't know what the hell Rock Nation got to do with anything? You said, have you heard a lot of people don't like Meg as a person? I have heard that. I mean, but it doesn't negate. She shouldn't have been shot in her foot because of it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think in the diss track, that 1501 situation, Kelsey said, I should have known by how you did 1501, that you was a shady human being. Yeah, I've heard that. I heard Joe Budden talking about Meg Thee Stallion recently. I seen that another vlogger tried to talk about all the people she did bad. I don't think it's the timing to do that because it plays into like what she said, that she's been getting hate. So why come forward if you won't get this type of hate? You guys are really like, some people are proving that they can't stand her. They done wasted a whole lot of tax, but I told them when I was out there, they was like, Pam, what would you do? I said, you know what? I would have told everybody. I would have told everybody's manager. I would have been like, let's all just sit down and kumbaya. Why should Meg ruin her career? Because it's never going to be the same. I don't care which way it goes. It's never going to be the same. I've done entertainment. I represent a few people in the entertainment business right now. I just think entertainment is boring to me. So I don't do it like a full-time gig. I do people that I know that because they trust me, they want me to do their work for them. They want me to negotiate their contracts. But I don't know, y'all. So let me read this real quick. What about the gun serial number? How in Kelsey DNA? Another sloppy botch job. You come in and you're suspected of a felony, and it was upheld in the United States Supreme Court. States Supreme Court, you can swab their mouth for DNA. Why wouldn't you hit a cheek? I think that was botched. Listen, like you just was negligent. You don't have to have intent for that. So that's the at this point. I think anything that has to do with willful, like you did it on purpose, I just don't think you did it on evidence that I seen. Y'all ain't gonna have Rock Nation after. Listen, I've dealt with Rock Nation, but I've dealt with Rock Nation on the sport. Didn't sign with them either. They ain't come after us though. So yeah, yeah. My son said civil suits are easier to win. That is true. For O.J. Simpson, he lost. You know, he won the criminal, but he lost the civil. More than not, is easier. It's easier to prove the highest burden in this here United States of America. So I think Megan's lawyers suing bloggers will open up a can of worms. Yeah, I don't think any bloggers have crossed the line. They're saying that they're reporting things that are not true. Um, you have a malice element to that. Some people interpret things different, especially in the courts. Some people don't know what certain things mean. That's why I feel like even jury instructions, that's why I let you guys know some of the jury instructions on what the jury is supposed to focus on. People don't look at these cases like that because they don't do them. They don't really know what's important. They're gonna pull out what's just like the whole thing of Tory, the DNA. People were like, it was women on the DNA on the gun. It's definitely women. No, it's not. That's not how DNA works. They can't tell whether it's women. It could have been, but it may not be. That's true. You can sue anybody, and it may be a publicity thing. You have to realize some people even bring lawsuits as a PR move because people tend to believe if you bring a lawsuit, you probably have a good basis for it. It was a lot of counterfeit documents. There was a lot of counterfeit reporters because I was in the courtroom where I'm like, that's what you heard? Like, and then people were arguing with me. I'm like, that's not even what was said. Like, what are you even talking about right now? And then people were like, well, you was in the courtroom, but it was 50 other people in the courtroom with you too. And they didn't say what you said. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I take notes all the time. Or you're not looking at your notes. Honey, I do this. I'm one of the ones that have to sit at the table and hear what they say, basically block out everybody behind me because you may say something like a Sean Kelly that I wasn't prepared for. So I got to take notes and just basic notes on how I'm across this dude on some new information. So I take stuff like it's almost like tattooed on my brain with a lot of testimony. Do I get it wrong sometimes? Absolutely, I do. But I never profess to be perfect. But I'm saying I do this. It's not like I'm just some random person in here and don't know what's important. That's why I was able to go through the whole opening probably different than what you've heard anybody else do it because I know what was important on what they said and what they were trying to pull up. I knew that there was a theme of she doesn't have a reason to lie because it basically she's being threatened, her career has been challenged, people don't like her, she's had relationship problems with her man that she's saying is more detrimental to her than that. The defense is saying she a whole liar and the jury instructions say that you ain't got to believe nothing she say, and so don't believe nothing she say. So they flipped their theme and said, "Oh, you're saying why would she lie? Well, let me tell you why she lied." They took their theme and that's the worst as a defense, as a prosecutor, I'm sure. They took your theme and flipped it and said, "Well, oh, you asked why she lied? Let me answer this question for you as to why she lied. And then they went through every single lie. So, okay, my husband said wrap it up. So, all right, y'all, I got to get out of here. Thank you all. Thank you for all 622 of you in the chat. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, hit that like. Thank y'all so much for the cash apps. I haven't been able to see. I know I got some PayPals and Venmos and all that. Crystal Proctor, thank you so much. Shawana, thank you so much for the cash app. Tasha, thank you so much for the cash app. And yeah, all my PayPals and stuff. I have to thank y'all on my next live. But I'm headed out of here, and we'll talk about when I get information on when this ends. And I'm sure they're going to put it in the hands of the jury later on. So I guess we'll see who's the winner and who's the loser, right? So we can quit arguing with each other, because folks took this case like it was their family for real. But anyway, thank y'all so much for thank you, Tasha. Thank you everybody for coming through, giving your comments. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all your comments, but we will definitely talk soon. But I got to get home. I've been on this West Coast way too long. All right, y'all. I am going to holler at you guys next time.